Hello. As we enter Module 2.4 and take a look at standardizing an intervention system for behavior, engagement, and attendance, we want to look closely at developing an intervention matrix for behavior and also how to connect students with the correct intervention. You can see from the flowchart we're about to walk through that we have four pink sections, or four areas where we're going to discuss a standardized intervention that students may receive when they're struggling in the area of behavior. This doesn't necessarily mean that they would be in a small group receiving a behavior intervention. These may be individualized, but the procedures and installation of these interventions can be standardized so that it's easy to match students to the intervention as soon as they need it. So our first step is always to consider our universal screening information to help determine the students who may need additional support. When we think about universal screening information for behavior, the quickest way to get that information is to use our rule of thumb of more than 2 office referrals, then a student would be considered at risk in the area of behavior. And that is the way the Universal Screening Systems results tool, which is linked below, is set up if you want to use that. But if you want to look at some additional areas, we've provided a resource that will identify the areas in early and middle elementary school, late elementary school, middle school, and high school that are areas to look at for universal screening. And when we examine the results of these, we want to take a look to see if our students are meeting that threshold that we've set, and if 80% of students are meeting that threshold. And if they are, then we want to confirm, again, always that our behavior expectations have been taught. And even if we have less than 80% of students meeting that threshold, we want to confirm behavior expectations have been taught and also defined in our classrooms. But at that point, we'd also want to revise and refine our core support as we start matching students with supplemental interventions. So when we think about matching students with some sort of supplemental intervention in the area of behavior, this flowchart really is matching the students with the right intervention and doing a cursory sort of function of the behavior. So the first question we want to ask is, does the student have the behavior skills needed to meet the expectations that we've set forth? And if the answer is no, then we want to include that standard protocol or that standard intervention of actually teaching the behavior or teaching some social skills instruction. So this could be as minor as teaching the expectations in our classroom. Again, if we have lots of students who are exhibiting what we would consider disrespect, then we want to explicitly teach what respect should be in that classroom. Or it could be more of a social skills curriculum. If we have decided that the student does have the behavior skills needed to meet the expectations, then we want to ask the question of, is the student's behavior driven by a need for adult attention? And here, if the answer to that is yes, then that's a student who would likely benefit from either they're having an adult mentor in the building or possibly a check-in, check-out intervention, but any standard intervention or standard treatment that's going to get them in contact with an adult and being rewarded for just being there and exhibiting correct behaviors with adult attention. If we have ruled that out, so the behavior is not driven by a need for adult attention, we want to take a look at, does the student require additional reinforcement and help with self-monitoring? And here you can see we have our final 2 standard interventions mentioned here. So if the answer is yes, then this is a student where we might consider as a team setting up a daily behavior report card as the intervention, so that daily behavior report card is set for the behaviors we'd like to see the student exhibit, and classroom teachers and adults connected with us students give those daily ratings to see if we're making progress in those areas. And if the answer is no, we've kind of ruled out the adult attention. We've ruled out that the student doesn't need more instruction specifically on the behaviors to exhibit, and they don't require additional reinforcement. Then that's the time when we want to go to this 4th and final step, which is considering a more individualized or more explicit functional behavior assessment to generate the appropriate intervention for that student. And in Module 2.4, we'll learn lots more about those interventions referenced in this flowchart, as well as the steps to get students matched to those interventions.